Hi, it's Dr. Steve from Misericordia University, and welcome to Developing Effective Instruction. This video is part of the graduate course Principles of Instructional Design. In this video, let's quickly take a look at two learning theories and see what we can draw from them as we develop technology-based instruction and training. Then, based on Gagne's model, let's see how we can develop effective technology-based instruction. Then let's focus on two areas of instruction: embedding items and providing feedback, and also incorporating interactivity into the instructional experience. To begin considering how to develop effective instruction through technological means, let's start by doing a quick reconsideration of learning theories and what we can draw from them. In the learning theory of behaviorism, people are said to learn by doing and then through practice, through reinforcement. So learners are more passive and reactive. Knowledge in this theory consists of stimulus-response bonds. In other words, you set up some stimuli, and then you want to induce the proper response and then reinforce it. So during the learning, we want to minimize the effect of any other distracting stimuli and eliminate any competing stimuli, and just have the learners focus on the stimuli to which we want to set up the appropriate response. And that's what learning or education is considered in behaviorism. Some educational strategies include teaching in small steps or blocks of instruction and using drill and practice to reinforce. In the learning theory constructivism, people are said to learn by constructing their own understanding of information. They construct their own knowledge, and known as schema. So what are learners like under constructivism? They're active, and they play a very important active role in the learning process. Knowledge consists of individual schemata being constructed by individuals. So when we're talking about the schema, we're talking about the way that the brain actually learns physiologically. So under this theory, what is education or learning? Well, education consists of helping students recall what they already know about a topic. So we kind of help them remember and recall that, so then they can now take a look at new information, and that supports them in reconstructing what they know in their individual schema. And in terms of constructing, that means remove information that no longer fits there and add new information and reconnect all these nodes of information. So the steps here are retrieval of what they already know, reconstruct it, and then put it back into memory again, called restorage. So some popular strategies to support constructivism are concept formation, help students really understand the whole of the concept, problem solving, and decision making, get them actively involved. When you compare the two theories, behaviorism is dealing with changes in overt behavior, as we're tying responses to a stimulus. So when a learner sees something, the learner then reacts in a certain way. So we're talking about changes in behavior. To review, in constructivism, we're talking about constructing mental schemata. So really, we're talking about and emphasizing teaching how to think, to really understand something, and to support learners constructing their knowledge. In training and effective instruction, we should really use knowledge of both constructivism and behaviorism in planning, teaching, and assessment. So let's take a look at some of the best that we can draw from behaviorism and from constructivism and incorporate it into our instructional designs. First of all, behaviorism. State objectives of the training and state them in terms of learner behavior. The student at the end of training will do this. Second, teach in small steps, small blocks or chunks of instruction. Don't cognitively overload the learners. Take it one item at a time. And then, after you teach one item, use drill and practice to teach skills that will help the students recognize the signals and then be able to perform those behaviors. Behaviorism also suggests select consequences that will reinforce the desired behavior and immediately follow the behavior. In other words, give positive feedback after the learners perform correctly. If they perform incorrectly, also provide them with feedback, but tell them why it's wrong and possibly give them another chance so they can get it right. From constructivism, we can draw these points. Begin instruction by helping students recall prerequisite knowledge. What do they already know about this content? By doing this, you're going to support individual learners building their own personal schemata because they're going to build on what they already know. Also, use metaphors to build bridges to the new content. Use examples and contexts to which the learners can relate, things that they already understand and they can build upon. Also, use graphic organizers. We can show students how the new content fits in with previously learned material, and also you can provide the context of what is the structure of this new content as well. Now let's turn our focus on how to develop effective technology-based instruction. In class, we had previously taken a look at Gagne's 9 significant events model of instruction. Let's do a quick review here and see how it applies to technology-based instruction and training. Gagne's first steps are gain attention. Now remember that gain attention involves 2 phases or 2 levels. Number 1 is to focus the learner to the training that's about to happen. But second of all, interest and intrigue the learner, if possible, into the content. Inform the learner of the objectives. So a good training module will state the objectives in terms of what the student will be able to do at the conclusion of that training module, and it'll state it very clearly. Then, to support constructivism, help the learner recall what they already know. Help them recall prerequisite information. The actual presentation of instruction exists in steps 4 through 7. Present the stimuli. Present new content to be learned. Then provide some guidance. Provide an example. And then immediately elicit performance and provide feedback. And then go back and do it again for another small chunk of information. Present some information. Provide an example, some guidance. Elicit some performance. Have the student do something to actively participate and practice it, and then provide feedback. Yes, they got this right, or no, they didn't, and why. At the end of the training module, assess performance. Give them a test. See if they really did acquire that material and if they're ready to go on. Now, depending on the medium you're using, and also the nature of the content itself, does the learner have to achieve 100% correct because it's a certification program of some sort? In that case, you might be able to branch the student back within the training and have them retake parts of it. And then step 9 is enhanced retention and transfer, which means we can help the learner see how this module fits into the larger picture. What is the whole task? What's the whole unit about? And how does this piece fit within it? In review and in short, you can see the first 3 steps are handled immediately upon entering the training module. Steps 8 and 9 are handled at the end of the training module. Steps 4, 5, 6, and 7 are repeated and repeated again and again until all the objectives have been met in the training. To reemphasize, after Gagne's events 1 through 3, present one concept, one small chunk or block of instruction. Present the information, give an example, ask the student to do something, embed a question, provide some feedback, give some type of practice, and as the medium allows, give some feedback. If you are a classroom teacher and you already use Gagne's model to support your lesson planning, realize that in the classroom, Gagne's events 1 through 7 represent typically one class period, and then 8 and 9 wrap up a unit. Now, in technology-based instruction, however, and training, it's going to be different. Steps 1 through 3, and then present a small block of instruction, and then that's 4 through 7, and then present another small 4 through 7, and then another objective 4 through 7, and then wrap up with the assessment and steps 8 and 9. In our course, we already considered the brain and what actually happens physiologically during learning and how we can support learning, and we drew different points out to support the positive construction of training and education. So consider and don't forget some of these points. Remember that to gain and maintain learner attention is critical in the learning process. The actively involving of students in learning is critical to support their development of schema. So get them actively involved, which can be a challenge in many cases when you're switching from a traditional in-class, face-to-face, in-person mode of teaching to technology-based training. Don't cognitively overload the learner. Remember the magic number. Use metaphors, analogies, examples, and context that the learners will understand. Use mnemonics to help people remember content that needs to be remembered. Eliminate the negative aspects of emotion that could possibly be roadblocks to people learning and remembering, and at the same time look at the positive side of emotions. And remember that any emotion that is linked with learning will enhance both understanding and also very much memory. And as part of that, consider the motivation of learners to undergo this training that you're developing. As you set out to develop technology-based training and instruction, don't forget about the front-end analysis. You examined your audience and the need for training. Remember the strengths and the weaknesses and the areas of potential difficulty that the learners might encounter when they're trying to go through this training. You proposed some strategies. Don't forget to review those and make sure that you include them in your instruction. And then make instructional choices based on everything you know from that front-end analysis. Select appropriate media, graphics, the type of language and the level of language, the approaches that you take, the pedagogy, the metaphors, the examples, the way you describe things, and other factors that are based on and centered around the learners. And very importantly, think about how you can make it more interactive versus a passive learning environment. Have the learners do something, because in their interaction with and engagement with the content, that's where success will be greatly enhanced. As you can tell, when you are creating a training program to be delivered through some technology medium, instructional design calls for small blocks of instruction, and that should be punctuated with embedded questions or practice along with feedback. Now, there are a whole variety of media that you can use to deliver your instruction. How can we provide embedded questions or practice and feedback? Let's take a look at some possibilities. One way that you could, as Gagne describes, elicit performance in different media would be to pose a question or an opportunity for practice. So, for example, depending on the medium, you could prompt the learners to pause the presentation to either reflect on an idea or to respond to some type of question. If possible, ask the learner to respond in some interactive way so that they're not just reading or watching, but they're actually interacting in some way. Some examples. You could create, through technology, a drag and drop activity, such as matching, categorizing, sequencing events, looking at flashcards, completing a timeline, completing a labeled diagram. If possible, ask them to type something or do something on the screen in a text box. When we consider how the brain works and how learning is most efficient, if learners are participating in some way in the learning process, the more the better, the more effective the learning will be. Prompt learners to in some way write something down. Again, if it's on the screen, maybe through a text box, maybe on a piece of paper, or maybe as part of your training, you've created a worksheet or a workbook. You could ask them to answer some question regarding the small chunk of instruction that has just been provided, or write out steps that have already been learned. You could ask them to draw something, like some flow chart or a schematic of some sort, or something that will be meaningful to the learner to support acquiring and recalling the content. You could ask them to project and predict how could they apply this information in their position. You could ask them to solve a problem. Further, you could ask the learner to write out an answer to some practice question. You could prompt the learner to write an example of this content. You could ask them to mark something down on a piece of paper or a worksheet that would be checked by some proctor who is helping with delivering this training. And keep in mind that if the typed material that you're asking them to produce as part of eliciting performance in the middle of instruction cannot be evaluated by the computerized device, then consider using a voiceover or a visual that can prompt the learners to compare their result with this sample. If you are relying on video as a primary means of delivering instruction, you could use several online tools to make those videos interactive and elicit performance from learners as they watch the video. Two of the great tools are Play Pose It and Ed Puzzle. In each of these tools, you can select a video. Now, certainly you can go to a site like Khan Academy or YouTube, or you can also select your own video. You can crop the video in case you only want to use a portion of it. You can record your voice over a video. You can embed questions, and then you can also view the results of those questions. In this course, we are not going to explore these tools in great depth. In other graduate courses, we will spend more time in these tools. But at this point, I wanted to just indicate that there are tools that allow more specific eliciting of performance within video. If you are asking a question during training, then plan to provide helpful, constructive, and instructive feedback. Because remember, the purpose of the feedback is to help ensure that the learner truly understands the content. So if they got it right, don't just say it's right. reinforce why that response was correct. If they got it wrong, provide the learner with some information as to why that response was incorrect, and possibly let them try it again. To show an example, if I, as a designer, were embedding a question in a PowerCast, which is an interactive way to utilize the platform of PowerPoint by individual learners, if I asked them this question, if they responded letter A, so this is an action button, if they clicked on letter A, they would get the answer correct. If they answered B or C, they would have it incorrect. Clicking on responses B or C would branch them to this slide. Notice that it states very directly that the answer is incorrect, but then it provides a little extra helpful information. There's also a button to branch them back in to give another try to this content. When the learner picks the correct response, we'll tell them it's correct, and then we can praise them according to what we know about the audience, what's motivational and what's appropriate to that particular group of learners. And then notice we don't just say, hey, great job, but rather we go on to describe a little bit more. We want to clear up any fuzzy understandings. We want to make sure that someone did not just guess. Keep in mind the purpose of the embedded questions and or practice in the middle of a training program. What we're looking to do is not really assess them at this point. We're not looking to grade them and determine are they really getting it or not, but rather we're looking to give them practice. We're eliciting response. We're getting them to work with the content more. Now, if it's critical that they really get this part of the content and have it 100%, well, then we would not send them back to try it again. We would send them back instead to go back through that portion of the training. But don't forget the whole purpose of this. It's to help learners really acquire the content. Embedding interactivity into training can be quite a challenge. Think about how could you embed questions or interactivity into the following media. In audio, you could always prompt the learner to pause the presentation and perform something. In video, you can use tools like Play, Pose It, or Edpuzzle, or you can prompt them to do something after watching the video. In screencasting, it can be very similar. And in multimedia platforms like web pages and PowerCasting, you can actually provide links to activities right in the platform. You have seen that when learners participate, instead of just watching instruction, you open up more channels through which learning can occur. At this point, let's take a quick survey of some tools that can support incorporating interactivity into instruction. If you are looking to create some low-tech paper-based activities, here are several options. The first one is theteacherscorner.net. At this site, you can, as a teacher or designer, create a number of different paper-based activities, print them out, and then make them available for your learners. Education.com has a number of printable games and paper-based activities that are very, very valuable as well. Let me highlight just one more site, and that is if you're working with younger learners and the content area is math, mathgames.com has a number of great worksheets that you could print out and use with your learners. Now maybe you want to go high-tech. Let's look at several high-tech options. You can start with tools that you already may have access to. If you're a current classroom teacher, and if you teach with the Promethean board and the Active Inspire software that drives it, you can start there. Open the dashboard from the View menu and select an activity. And they have wonderful interactive activities such as Categorize, flashcards, labeling of diagrams, matching, sequencing, timelines, and a whole bunch more. After you create, certainly you can save it and embed it within the Promethean board software itself within a flip chart, but you can also save it so that you can send it to students, or in the case of training, you can link to that saved activity. Let's see the steps involved to create an interactive activity. First of all, I'm going to go up to the View menu in Active Inspire. I'm going to locate the dashboard. From the dashboard, I can select Activities. And I can also find my recent flip charts and activities over here in the left pane. I'm going to click on Activities, and from here, you can see that we have a whole host of different activities from which to choose. From here, I can also open one that I've already created in case I want to edit it further. So I'm going to say Open, and I'm going to find my flip chart browser's activity. Notice that the name of the file is something.activity. So I'm going to open this, and this is going to be a matching game. So right here, we can play it, but I'm going to go in and edit this. Notice that I can also take it up to the full screen here. I'm going to click Edit, and notice that here we can save it, play it, and also add it to the page. So just to point that out, here I've already typed in some of these items. So the page browser and its match is to navigate to another page, the resource browser, and so on. So I've got 4 so far. I'm going to click into a number 5, and I'm going to say the voting browser, to show you how easy it is to do. Notice as I start on number 5, a possible number 6 appears, and that will keep happening. So the voting browser, I'll say activate a class question. That's what the voting browser does. It controls the clickers or the student response systems. And I could go down and I can play with changing the background and the colors and so on. When I'm finished, I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to go out and I'm going to play it. So here it's the one side of the matching, here is the other, and then I can simply take one of these, like the page browser I know is to navigate to another page, so I'll take that up here. The resource browser, let's say I get this one wrong, I'm going to say activate a class question. Notice that it pops back over there. One site online that allows you to create your own games and customize them is WISC Online. And you might figure that that refers to the state of Wisconsin, and you would be right. This site actually began, not that it was public yet, but started its inception in 1999, and it was a major undertaking. It was a major project that involved faculty members from about 15 different universities and colleges, and also was funded by a number of different agencies and governmental agencies. Because of that, it's for free, and it's also academically very sound. Let's take a look at WISC Online. So the first thing you'll notice on this site is that it points out that it's a game builder. So you can build your own game for free. I like the variety of games that are here. When you look at the different types of games, some of them will lend themselves better to older students. Some of them will lend themselves better to younger students. But really, any age student could play some of these games. The nice thing is the teacher creates the content, puts them in, determines how long the game will be, how advanced or how easy the game will be. And when you look at the different games that are here, they basically will represent different types of questions that will be like multiple choice, true, false. They could be matching. They could be short answers, and so on. Let me click into one of them. One of my favorites here is baseball, because it gives you the feel of baseball and the sounds of baseball and some of the visuals of baseball. Now, again, I would go in and create a new game, but I'm just going to play a quick demo game, which is good for a teacher to know. You can play a quick game and see what it looks like to see if that would be of interest to your students. Now, remember that there were different people from technical colleges, in many cases, creating some of this content for the demos. So here we're going to look at cooling system troubleshooting. I don't think I'm going to know a whole lot about this particular content, but we'll give you a little feel for it. So I have no idea here. I'm going to click on something, and I'm not batting 1,000, as it were. Be within so much. Okay, let's see. I'll say a comfort zone. Oh, I got a base hit. How great is that? So notice there are graphics, there are sounds, and again, as a teacher, you can go in and you can create all of your own content. There are a lot of games to experiment with on this site. Another site where you can create your own content or also choose from existing content is called Bamboozle. Let's take a look at Bamboozle. To use this site, they will ask you to, it is for free, but they will ask you to sign in and get a password and so on. When you get in and log in as a teacher, it's going to take you to their opening page, which will show you some of the current things that are going on. So, for example, like Thanksgiving and various holidays and some other popular items that are trending right now. Then I can go up here and I can search for something. So I'm going to search for astronomy games. And again, I can create my own content, but I'm going to start by seeing what's out there. So I think I'm going to start with this, and it's space vocabulary. So I'm going to click in. When I click in, I'm getting a preview of the game already. So here are all the questions that are going to be available. Notice you can include multimedia in on these cards. Notice that there are 3 different ways to view this content. Number 1 is a slideshow. So a slideshow will let the student, I'll just click for a second, and then I can just use my arrow key as in PowerPoint, and I can rehearse things. I can take a look at the content. And then when I go back, let me try a second way of entering this content. I can do the study method. So the study method will allow me to click in and view something, then I could look at the answer, and I can track how I'm doing. So this is for individual study at this point. I'm going to hit back here, go back one more time, then I could actually play the game. Now when I play the game, as a teacher, if I'm playing it in class, I can have 2 teams if I wanted to. Or if we're going solo, we could do 1. We could ask for the number of questions that we want out of the total that are provided. So in this case, there are 24. Then we could do questions and then have other game aspects with scoring and also with power-ups, so some other gamification elements. So I selected 2 teams, and I'm just going to choose one of these items. So this is going to kind of feel like Jeopardy. So I would have to provide the answer, and then after the first team responds, here's the appropriate response. And we could say they did it wrong or they got it okay. So they got the points in this case. The second team, let's say that they answered wrong here. They didn't say moon. So then they would not get those points at that point. But notice even when you're rolling over, it's kind of exciting for the learners to do this. It's interactive. It's interesting. And keep in mind, you can create your own content, and I'm just taking a look at some existing content to get an idea of what the games look like. Another interesting site is called Flippity. At flippity.net, what's interesting here is they have several different ways that you can create your own games, and one of those ways is to use a Google spreadsheet. So if you're good with spreadsheets, you can type all the information in and the game will be created. But they also have some shortcuts where you could skip the spreadsheet. Let's take a little look at Flippity. As I enter Flippity, you can see that they're saying easily turn a Google spreadsheet into some online game. Now you'll notice that there are a number of games featured here, and these are all available by using the spreadsheet. Now notice they also have a quick demo of each of these. You can read the instructions, and you can also download the template here for the spreadsheet. Now, we can also go beyond this and skip the spreadsheet. First, let me go into one of these. Let me do a quick demo of this one, a scavenger hunt. So I'm going to click in. So this gives a quick demo of what it will look like. We have it up and running. So like an escape room, I'm going to click on the first lock, and they ask a question, and then see if I can provide the answer. Now here I'll have to type that short answer in, and that will open this key, and it will allow me to open and unlock that lock. I'm not sure what the answer to this is, so I'm going to click on the hint, and it's asking, are you sure you want to get this hint? Yes, I do. And then I look down and I say, oh, okay, they're talking about a keyboard. All right, so let me type the word keyboard, and then I'll click on the key, and sure enough, I have unlocked lock number 1. And then I could go forward, and then I could go back to see all the other locks that are available as well. Now I'm going to go back to our main screen, and let me now look at the second tab, and this is taking the same group of games from the same group of games. This is a subset that is suggested if you're doing online learning with your students. And finally, let's do the quick version, which is skip the spreadsheet, and you can just type it in live here, and they'll start you off with a sample set of words and content. But we'll start with that, and then we can just do it live with the student. So again, the spreadsheet's a little better because you'll have it saved. But I'm going to take the words that they have provided, and let me start off with the snowman. I like the snowman a lot because in many classrooms we see the game Hangman played. And Hangman kind of has some negative connotations to it. So let me start off and play the snow person game here. I'll type a letter. Oh, good. So they're putting the letter up here, and so far I'm good. I'll type another letter, see if it's in there. No, it's not. So instead of a person hanging, you notice the snow person is starting to melt. So I'll put another letter, which I'm thinking will maybe not be in there. Sure enough, and there goes his face on the ground. Let's see if I can. Nope, I already used that letter, so notice it catches that for me. Oop, my snow person's not looking so good at this point. And I'm probably going to find one here that I'm starting to get there. Oh, I think I see it now. And the end is the snow person comes back to life here, which is really positive. So there's some really good games here. And I go on, and then I could go on to the next one and so on. Let me go back and let's look at, they have matching games. Here's a randomizer wheel. I like this wheel. Notice your content goes on the wheel. This is more like a Price is Right big wheel type of thing. And a teacher can use a wheel, as we've discussed in class, in many different ways. So really good games here, and a whole lot to choose from. But to get the true power out of the website, you definitely want to use the spreadsheet behind the scenes. And for our last game of this presentation, let's take a look at Speed Match. Speed Match is a drag and drop matching game provided at superteachertools.com. So in Speed Match, the idea is, and again, you'll create your own content here. You're going to take, and here they only have 5 matching. Here are the possible answers. Here are the questions. So we'll take one. We'll start with number 1. It's the capital of Florida. And I'm going to drag it down. And then it tells me if I'm correct. And now it is timing me and also told me I have 1 out of 5. Capital of Hawaii. I'll drag that one down. And sure enough, I'm correct. The next one I'm going to get wrong to see what happens. Notice it will not let me drag the wrong one in, so the student has another chance to try again. Now, where this can get involved is you could create many possible answers and questions here. You could put 20 questions here if you'd like to, and your content could be pretty involved if you choose it, or easier if you choose it as well. Again, the only thing I don't like here is there are some ads on this site, so you just kind of have to overlook and kind of work around those ads. But the tool itself is very effective and can be motivating and fun for students. If you're using PowerPoint to create a PowerCast as your delivery of instruction, you have many opportunities to create interactivity for the learners. For example, you can use action buttons to link to websites, videos, and also other interactive online activities, some of which we just took a look at. You can also create invisible buttons to make hotspots over a bigger graphic, and then these buttons can navigate to other slides of information. You can create an invisible button by just drawing an action button, and then under the formatting tools, select Fill, No Fill, and Outline, No Outline. Let's take a look at how this could work. Here I am in PowerPoint, and I'm creating several slides as part of a PowerCast. I would like to use this graphic to enable students to click on structures in the brain, and that will navigate them to these subsequent slides, and each slide has room here for a text and other information. And then we'll be able to click and go back to this slide again. So let's go do it. I'm going to go up to the Insert menu, and I'm going to go to Shapes. I'm going to navigate to the bottom where it says Action Buttons, and I'm going to drag out the bottommost button, which is the custom button. So I'm going to drag out for the frontal lobe area. Notice I'm being generous with the size, and I'm going to navigate to the next slide in this case, and then I'm going to do one more shape. I'm going to drag it over the temporal lobe. I don't want to overlap them, so I'm going to correct that in a moment. I'm going to say a custom slide here. Temporal lobe is here. Now, let me just resize these a little bit. I do want to be generous with the size in case the learner clicks a little bit larger, like go outside of the area. Okay, so I'm set with these two. Now let's make them invisible. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to go to the shape format, and the fill, I'm going to say no fill. So now it's half invisible. Where it says shape outline, I'm going to say no outline. Notice it's here. When I click outside of it, you don't see it. It's now invisible. I'll click over here, and now shape format, I already have those colors locked in. So shape fill, no fill, shape outline, no outline. Clicking on either of these will now take me to one of these appropriate slides. All I have to do now is put a back button. So I'm going to go to Insert Shapes, and I'm going to take the Return button, so I'll put that down here, and it says Return to the last slide viewed. Now I may need to go and change its color and so on, and I can do that. I'm going to go and copy that, and now I can go to this slide and simply paste it. So this way, when I copy and paste, they're uniformly placed, and now when the learner runs this and clicks on either of these sections, and again, ideally I would have more sections here. I would have to have all these sections, or hot, or I would have to describe what's hot here. Then the learner will move to these other areas. As we wrap up this video, as you design instruction, look to incorporate the following: Gagne's model of instruction, principles we considered from the theories of behaviorism and constructivism. Work to reduce the cognitive load on the learner. Remember to use short blocks of instruction punctuated by embedded questions or activities with feedback. And remember to go back to your front-end analysis, your high-level design document, and allow the insights that you gain and the strategies that you developed during that time to inform how your instruction is going to take place. This week we will have 3 remote activities. First, let's have a quick discussion online that will help us process what we looked at in today's video. Strategies to promote active learning. And again, you don't have to individually respond to each one of these items, but the hope is that within our class we will cover all these different items. What is the importance of eliciting performance from learners during training? And then name some ways you can incorporate interactivity into your training module, some sites where you could create low-tech, paper-based activities, and some sites or tools where you could create technology-based interactive activities. Our second activity is to pull together your high-level design document, your front-end analysis. We described it last week. At this point, finalize it, perfect it, and submit it. And it will consist of all of these parts listed here. And if you want to go back and review more particulars, go back to our last week's class. The big activity at this time is the guided final project, and that is to create a screencast or a video or audio-based instructional module using the platform and the technology of your choice. This is an overview of the grading of the final project. The high-level design we've discussed in great detail. In your instructional prototype, keep in mind that your task may involve many modules to teach it, but you're going to develop one. So your instructional prototype will be looking at the instructional module itself. We're going to look at the cognitive practice to make sure you're reducing cognitive load, and we'll also grade on the overall effectiveness of your training product. You can find a specific rubric under the final project folder on Blackboard. Next week, we're going to engage in several short reflective activities that will give you a chance to reflect on all of the learning from this semester's class. Next week, we will have no new material. Instead, we will set up a synchronous time within the next 2 weeks to present the technology-based training modules, and that will be held during the week of final exams. I hope you enjoyed today's video.